Hi, this is Sally Wood for Be Inspired, and I'm quite excited about this project. When I saw my friend bring these in, I remembered that I reupholstered these 10 years ago. It's nice to know that the work that I do has lasted so long. Obviously, the fabric has an awful lot to say about that. I will be replacing the foam because it's giving a little bit more than it should. So let's get on with it. Because this has two flat sides, it's a little bit difficult to work with. But the first thing you need to do is find somewhere that you can pull the trim up, which seems to be on this front edge, probably where it's mostly used. I don't think I've got enough pulling power. I've managed to pull this up like this and find some of the staples underneath. I'm going to slowly work my way around until it's off. Well, I'm able to pull some of this up. So for odd shaped chairs or seats, you need to work a way that's safe for you to work on taking them to pieces. Don't work along from the wood up, work towards the frame, and very carefully so you don't ruin the frame. And work your way around. I've got the cover off. I'm going to take this cover off and I'm going to look at the foam. Okay, this one's trashed. They seem to have cut the top foam on all of them. But I'm going to keep this one for now because I do have one to go under it. I'm not sure if I'm going to put the super soft on top or just leave this on top. So I'll investigate that. But this can certainly go because this is decidedly soft compared to this one. This one still has body in it. I've cut the piping off because that was well and truly glued on there, and I've opened the seams that I put in. See what a lovely colour it was before. 10 years of wear and tear. The centre of the pattern went away from here. I'm going to do the same with this. I've decided this is the way the pile of the fabric goes because when I pull it back it's really quite rough. If I go side to side it's not. I folded this in half so that I get a really good centre mark, and I am just going to put this on here following one of these patterns, and I think I'll choose that one, and the reason is I can go far enough over here. There's my centre, and I'm going to open it up, flatten that out, and I'm going to give it a nice 2 inches all the way around like this. Fold this one back in half like this. Find my centre line, which is this one here. Fold along that centre line. Put a mark at the bottom and a mark at the top. Now this is my new pattern. When you are lining up a pattern like this, you need to make sure you've actually got the right pattern to follow. I thought it was this one. It's not. I'm sure it matches somewhere along here. I just don't see it at the moment. Oh yeah, I do. Here it is. No, this might take a little bit of finding. I've managed to find the pattern match here, which means this goes over. So I'm going to slide this along till I find the same pattern match here, and therefore that goes over. So there must be one somewhere, or maybe here. Sometimes you just have to look around for your pattern matches to make sure that you've got them where you need them. And if I do this, I won't waste quite so much fabric as I go up. I'll still have quite a bit here to do cushion. I just can't get them out side by side. Once I've lined everything up the way I want it, I'm going to cut on round. The thing to take into consideration when you do it this way is the patterns on this side might not be exactly the same as the ones you've cut out. Just cut it as close as you can to the one that you want it to look like, because when it goes on it will all look the same along the centres. Put your marks in as you get to them. So once you've lined up, always use the first one you cut as the template, because if you make a mistake you only make it once each time, rather than compound it by using the one you made the mistake as the next template. I have learnt this from bitter experience. The back here and here, so if I want to double check I can pop my ruler there and make sure that all of these lines match up. Having done that, I'm going to take my ruler, I'm going to follow this sew line out and I'm going to clip it. I'm going to follow the sew line out from here, and I'm also going to clip that. When I've done that, I'm going to roll this back to the top of my sew line, and then putting a pin at the top of the sew line, face it down. When I sew, I'm going to sew from here on out. Having done that, I'm going to turn it because it's easier than me walking around the table. Repeat this on the other sides. So there, Just make it as flat as possible, because after all, this top fabric is slightly distorted. Then fold it back to the top of the sew line there and put your pin in there towards the outside edge, and repeat on the third side. Once you've done one, use the master copy, which is the first one you worked on, and then transfer all of those marks onto the remaining three. In this case, instead of rolling it all the way up, I would fold it over so you can see where the pin comes through, like that. Put the pin in at the top of your mark and then on down. Repeat on the remaining sides, the corresponding ones. This is the foam that I like to use. I am just going to spray this like this and place that on top of here. Make sure that the back is lined up. Once the back is lined up, everything else should line up. It's a little bit oversized, but not by very much. It'll be fine. And then I ended up deciding to keep, this was the piece of foam that was under the top foam. So this was originally on the base. It's a little bit firmer than super soft. I know it's only 10 years old because I remember doing this project when she first got the stools. So the foam on top, yeah, it's a little bit old, but it'll be fine. This is where it was glued before, so I'm just going to glue that too and stick that on top. Now just put this over the top. I'm going to pop that down like that, and I'm going to pinch my two cut marks there and there together like that. So let's pop a pin here. Can go a little bit higher, that's fine. But when I look here, this is meant to be the top corner, and if I push that in, it's not quite there. So I'm going to move this, pop that in like that, and move it to here. Now you've got to remember that the previous cover was stretched into place, so might be misshapen. I'm pleased with that. That comes in. Actually, that could tighten up just a little bit, but I might pull that from the other side. So then I'm going to do the same with this corner. Pinch the two cut marks in together like that, and I think that's more or less where it needs to be. That's workable, because when I'm pulling the fabric in, I can just pull it into shape. And then I'll do the last corner. Again, pull those cut marks into place. Just remember the front is rounded, so it's not going to be exact, and the two sides that create the pie cut here would be different anyway. And this again is a workable point. Having got all of that in, I'm going to go back here, and I think I am going to pull this back a little bit and that back a little bit to make it more of a right angle. I'm going to do this on all four of them because it might vary from one seat to another. On each corner, take the pin up but leave it on the corner. Just poke it straight the way through, and then on the bottom, pinch your finger and thumb into the corner that's there. Open it up, still holding it, and put your pin all the way through like that and up. Now you can see the pin poking out here. I'm going to pop that under. So where the pin comes out is where I've started for the sewing down. I'm just going to go forward and back, but I'm lining this up here where the pin is here. So I'm going to go in a straight line. Forward, back and forward, move the pin at the back. I'm going to pull this pin out, but my finger is on where it was coming through. The reason I've taken it out is so that the fabric can lay flat. Aim towards my finger, all the way down and reverse. And you want to do that on all three corners of the chair seat. I've now cut a piece of dacron to go over the top, and all I need to do is make sure that it at least comes to the top here. Does that on all three sides. And then I did cut the seam back slightly so that it will be flatter. At least I'm going to pop all those corners where the corners need to go, like that. And then starting at the back, I'm going to pull that down and then into place on the sides. This is a pre-check to see how everything looks. I think that's going to be fine. I'm going to start at the back, pull that in. I'm going to cut one way up, but instead of cutting it all the way down, I'm going to fold that back over to that side and then cut up. So there's a little bit of an overlap. That means if there's anything missing here, it should nicely fill it up for me. Put that on the corner, pull that into place. The same on the corner here. Pull that up and cut that in line all the way up, and then cut that just a little bit over. And then you've got enough, as I say, just to pop in where it might need to be popped into. Line that corner up, pull that one in. And if necessary, you can push the dacron into the corner just a little bit, because when you pull it down, it will come into place anyway. Now here there's a little bit missing, so I'm going to pop that there, pop that down over the top, pop that in, and then pull this corner into place as well. I'm actually going to start on the center front, so I'm going to cut this up slightly and across the front, popping it down, and hopefully, yeah, that lines up nicely. So I'm going to pull this down, not too hard, but just into place, and pull this down and into place here, and again just here. Pull it down so it rests, the base of this rests on the top of the wood, so I don't actually staple in here. And I'm going to pull this down and into place too. I do have to be careful because this is a little bit awkward to find, so I'm going to cut a little bit off here going back, and just a little bit off here. If I cut along here, I can cut up to just underneath that line there. Pull it into place, make sure that the back seam and the corner here are in line, and I'm able to pull from the front now. Pull that down, staple it from both sides. Come around here, pull it in slightly, like that, and then a little bit on this side, like that, and staple it. So here, I'm going to pull that down, make sure that there's nothing along the top, make sure that the sew line is in line with the stool there. Again, turn it and do the front, like this, and then again. The awkward thing about this is you're doing everything on the bias, and when you do things on the bias, they kind of stretch. Now this one wants to wrinkle a little bit, so I'm going to push it down, keep my fingers in a straight line, and secure here. My main problem with this is this part here is a loose weave, and this is a firmer weave because of the velvet. So it is not going to want to go in as evenly as I would like. So I'm going to have to pick my battle with this fabric. As long as it looks even, that's all I care about. This side will probably go in a lot better than the front, only because the front is arced. And again, let's pull it in. It just looks lumpy, just not the look I really want. Just looks lumpy again along here. I think once the piping is on, it's going to be a lot more even. I'm not pulling it as in across the top, I'm just pulling it enough to just give a little bit of a curve here and go into shape. And then I'll start here on this side. I can pull it back slightly on this. On the front here, it can go this way slightly, and on the back side that, and it should pull it in nice and evenly as I get to the middle. Now I've just worked a little bit extra stuffing into this corner here because of the way the fabric goes. I'm going to pull it down just slightly and into place. That looks better. I've already stapled in the middle there where I wanted it to go, and I'm just going to push any padding up into the base there and work my way along. I'm not pulling it really one way or the other, because if I pull it like that, it's going to make ripples, and I don't want that. So I've got to be really gentle when I'm pulling it in on the bias. Work towards the center on this half. Just always make sure you know where the top rail is, because you don't want to be stapling into the top rail. You kind of find it with your fingers. With thick fabric, it's always a little bit difficult. I think I missed it again, but I'd much rather miss it going over the top than to get it into the wrong place. And I'll work all the way across to this side here. Now, a little bit of advantage I have, I can actually put it on the side, one of the straight sides, and then pull the fabric in. I'm just not 100% sure about this. Pull that there. If I pull it in mid-sections all the way across, if there is any pleating, it's going to be very minor. I can take that out in a minute and straighten that out. And try to make it even across the top. That's the other thing. I can pull that in. I'm going to just remove a couple here so this will go in a little bit better. Now I've gone round twice on this to make it as smooth as possible. I found that starting in the middle and working out to both sides was very helpful, and I had to take this in. So now I've got this, I'm going to put another one up. This is the footstool I've already put in. I'm going to compare each part of the pattern. So this one almost comes down to here, and that's the first bit I'm going to put in. So I'm going to pull that down and find the top of the leg and staple. And I'm going to come to this side, trim back the dacron a little bit because it's a little bit long. I will retrim the dacron later, especially around the front here. So do that too. Pull this down, and I'm going to compare it to this corner here. I'm going to do the same on this corner. This actually comes over further than on here, but it won't matter too much so long as it's more or less in line. Well, they will alter on all of them to a certain extent. So now the same again on the front. I'm going to cut some of this back because it's a little bit too bulky. I'll have to cut it back a couple of times before I'm happy. So this comes down along here, and this comes just to the center of this here, look. So I've got it here, down. I think that actually comes in the center. It looks like there's a little bit of a nodule coming up, so I'm going to pop that here. And again on this corner, that comes further down. So I will pull all of this in and again staple. These will vary. As I go around, I will pull them in. At the moment this looks really awful, but it will look more like this in a minute. Now, just so that when I pull this side it doesn't twist on this side, I'm going to pull this over to about midway between here and here. Trim that back just a bit. Pull that over like this so it's even. Hold it into position and secure. I'm going to just put one more here. Now the advantage of this is not the first one that I'm doing. So the first one I had to decide where the pattern was going to do, and subsequent ones, the other three, I don't. So I'm going to just pop the wadding up and under like that and pull this down. I'm going to hold it and roll that forward from the back to the front until I'm satisfied with where that's going to go. And this is the matching pattern to the existing chair. So I'm going to just pop that in there. The disadvantage of having something that's got a round surface is you need to find a way of supporting it. So when I compare this pattern here to the one over there, this comes in and down, slightly forward, and secure it. I'm going to move my way along, pushing the dacron up. I don't want this to look too twisted, so I'm going to have to twist it back into shape. And I think that's about right, so I'm going to pop that one in. I'm pulling it slightly forward but square on. It's a little bit confusing to explain it actually. And then I'm going to put that one in here and then move on back to the center one that I've already put in, which I think I'm going to have to move. Yeah, it's ribbing here and I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to take this one out and level it in. But after I've moved from the back forward, and pull that in and then pull this one in here like that. I'm going to leave that and then go to the other side and start pulling in from there. And I'll turn the other stool around so I can see it. Looking at this corner compared to the one over here, it's not quite where I want it, so I will have to adjust there. This part of the pattern comes in right above the leg. So if I pull that back slightly and staple it into position, that should work. Now I'm going to pull this down. That blue area there seems to be just in the right place, so I'll secure along here as well. And then rework this corner. Now I've just pulled out some of this and I'm going to trim back to the top of here just a little bit because I need the corner to go in nicely. I'm going to just staple this in here like that, and then bring it down flat and into place. I think I might need to build that up, but I'll have a look at that in a minute. Once the other side's pulled in, it'll straighten out. I'm using up the leftover pieces of fabric, and I'm just making sure that all of the pile goes the same way, because I want the piping to look as if it's all one continuous piece. Then I'm cutting it to 2 1/4 inches width, because it's got to be double piping, and this fabric is quite thick. As many as I can get at the moment that are quite long, and then I'll use up the smaller pieces if I have to. I've got my second piece here, which I'm going to pop here, and I'm going to sew diagonally from one corner to the other. You don't want big stitches, otherwise the piping shows through. Because this has a pile, I'm going to make sure the pile is going this way. Although it's cut on the diagonal, it still has a right and a wrong way. And I am going to pop this on this side and fold it over just a small amount. Pop that at the top here. I've extended the stitch to the longest stitch, which is number 5. I need a little bit of help to get it started. Keep this folded just a small amount. Push the cording into the fold of the fabric there. There we go. When you get to a join, I've cut it to about 1/4 inch either side. Open it up so it's nice and flat. Fold that over and sew on through. I always double check, and I want it as tight as I can get it. And then carry on going down. You don't want to go too far over, because you've got to fold the other part of the fabric over the top and round, so you don't want to waste it. I'm going to go all the way down to the end here. Having gone down one side with the single grooved foot, I'm going to swap it out for the double groove. Just makes life a little easier when doing double piping. As this is quite thick fabric, I'm going to cut the inside back to the stitching, or as close as I can to the stitching, all the way down. If it's a thinner fabric, I can leave it and just roll it inside for the second side of the piping, but when it's thick like this, it's not a good way of doing it. You want all the bulk out if you can get it. When putting the next side in, make sure that the top of the piping is even like that, and then roll it over. Pop that underneath the foot like that and start sewing. It's actually easier to do double piping this way. I sometimes do it side by side, but they do tend to fight with each other and want to twist. Double piping has the 2 pieces like that, and there's a little thread that goes between the 2 to keep them next to each other. I find that they tend to move and want to swap places. I prefer to use 2 separate strands and then do one side and then the other, but it's really up to you. If you don't have a piping foot, you could use a zipper foot for the one side, and then you can very carefully balance a normal foot on top and then just sew down in between where the stitches are. I'm going to do this to the end. When you do put the second row in, just make sure that everything is tight round the second piping. Also make sure that the joins are open, and make sure on top of all of that that you try to sew it in as evenly as possible. You want everything to be kept straight. With it cut on the bias, it does tend to want to walk side to side. As with the first side, on the second side you also need to cut all the excess fabric back as close as you can to the stitching, like that. I always push it up against the stitching so I get it as close as possible all the way along. So you don't want any of this raw edge to be visible from the top. You want it as close to the center as possible. Work out which is the right end. All I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this back just a little bit like that, and with a hot glue gun I'm going to put just a little bit of glue in there, like that, along there, so that I can fold that together like that, and then I'm going to put a little bit of glue there just to start it off. Fold that over, only so that it gives a nice end like that. be careful not to burn yourself. I burnt myself quite badly yesterday on the hot glue. So this is quite nice and neat. Cut back any loose ends that you think might show through. Because of the thickness of the fabric and where I had to staple it, it's a little bit close there. And then all I'm going to do is put plenty of glue down here, like that. So I'm slowly working my way around. Put plenty of glue along that seam. This seam has to be totally glued in. Only do a little length at a time and then fold it on up and into place. Make sure there's no threads from underneath, so that can come out. Cut any threads that are coming out, and if you can, just push them up to where the glue is and it should hold it. Pull it a little bit tight, but not too tight. If it's too loose and people push it down, it will come undone, but if it's quite tight, it should hold in place. Twist it around again and glue. It's actually quite easy. And again, just pop it into place and work your way around. I need all of this to be stuck here so I can do the join without it all coming apart. I'm going to take it a little bit closer, only by a couple of inches, a few centimetres, so that everything is where I want it to be. Hold that for a second. Here's my join. When I first did the join, I popped all of the fabric underneath, but to join this is a little bit awkward because of the thickness of the fabric, and I don't want to be messing too long with it, so I'm going to just cut it straight up so it's level with the end like that. Pull this out. I'm not going to mess with it too much because I really don't want to cause any damage to the end here. Put that there like that. Line that up. See, it's already disappearing into the join, and all I'm going to do is put a little bit of glue in that join. I really push it in there so that it holds everything together. Should hold all of that fluff in where it needs to be. And then I leave it. I don't want to touch it because if I touch it I might mess it up. I think that's a pretty good join. So that's that one finished. Now I've got to do all the others. So all the others will be done exactly the same way. Thank you for joining me on this project. I'm really pleased with the way these have all turned out. The patterns all flow out through the centre. It's easier to do it this way, otherwise you'll have patterns going in various directions. If you want to see more from me, please subscribe and hit the bell button. A few thumbs up would be absolutely excellent. And in the meantime, take care. See you later. Ciao.